What's going on, YouTubers? Mr. Wilson here, coming at you with a video on how to change your steering rack in a Pontiac G6. Specifically, they call this a manual/electric assist power steering rack. Not all G6s have this style rack, so just check out and see what you have first before this video might be relevant to you. This is an 05 Pontiac G6 sedan. In this one, we've had in the shop chasing down a clunking noise in the front suspension, which we originally thought it was the steering intermediate shaft, which is a very common failure. But this sneaky guy right here ended up having a excessive play in the steering rack itself. And let's get my handy dandy flashlight and see if I can show you what you might want to look out for. Amazingly enough, this car has 43,000 miles on it. One owner, older lady, all the stuff you want to hear about a car that should never have a failure. And I really was shocked to see that this rack is bad. But what happens to these manual electric racks, as they call them, is they get excessive shaft play internally. So what happens is, let me set my light up here. What happens is, this is the passenger side of the steering rack, and this rack actually gets wear inside of it, right where this shaft goes in. This particular one, of course, I have the rack unbolted now. This bounces up and down inside the housing, and that actually creates a clunking noise. And at first I thought it was an intermediate shaft. Then by the looks of it, it looked like it was an inner tie rod. When you're pulling on the tie rod, you can make this noise happen. But it wasn't until I actually disconnected both tie rods and pulled the boot back and started yanking on this, and now you could see this up and down play that is in the actual shaft of the rack. I don't know how common that is, but it looks like they're all in stock locally at parts suppliers. So if you're running around chasing a clunking noise in your steering and it's not your intermediate shaft, and you've checked your inner and outer tie rods, you might want to disconnect these both tie rods, as you can see they are here, and try to pull in and out on those inner tie rods, and you can get a better feel for it than just yanking it with the tire like you normally do. And that's what led me to figure out this problem, was disconnecting these tie rods. But let me just start by saying this is a really, really easy power steering, manual steering rack to change. And really, I have a lift, but you know, if you got some good jack stands and some 18mm sockets and wrenches, along with an 11mm socket to disconnect the steering shaft, this thing comes off really easy. On the end of the tie rods, you've got your 18mm castle nut, and what I recommend when you do with these to get these off is just spin them upside down. Get it so that this base of this nut is even with the base of this shaft right here, and you need one of these as your friend. This I call the convincer, and you got to whack this sucker really, really hard. Now, this car's got 40,000 miles on it. I might be a little bit more gifted in getting these to pop off than you will be. So once you knock both of those free, this car just has one connection for this intermediate shaft, which you can see I have disconnected right here. And you got your intermediate shaft from the steering to your rack, and that you can get right through this opening with a nice long extension and an 11mm socket on the end. And if you have one of these, even better. That popped off in 2 seconds. You just pull back and disconnect that steering linkage. Then all you have left are your main bolts that hold the rack in. These are 18mm on both ends. Like I said, the impact is great to have. If you have an electric impact, it's going to save you a lot of juice on this job. But they go right up to the rack right here, right up to the rack right here. It's very easy to get a box end wrench in there and grab the other side, the nut, with the 18 and hit it with the electric impact. If you don't, you're gonna have a more difficult of a time there with your arms laying on the ground. You might want to enlist a friend to hold the top bolt while you ratchet the bottom bolt with a, you're gonna need a 1/2 inch ratchet. I mean, a 3/8 will do, but once again, you'll be burning your arms off. So really, with just removing these tie rods and the 18mm bolts that hold the main rack, this thing's ready to fall out. Now, unfortunately, I'm handicapped with holding my phone here, so I'm gonna have to splice back in with the rack removed. But I'll give you the hints and tricks on that. Is it going to come out this driver's side right here, and you have to do some twisting and some fighting and some yelling. But the really great thing about this rack is there's no power steering lines. There's not even a connector on it. It is the simplest rack to change. So this is something you can do in your driveway just by turning some wrenches. We'll splice back in with the rack removed. Okay, the rack is now out of the vehicle, and you only have to remove one bolt to do this. So you're going to pull the rack out right from this little passenger side hole, and you can just twist the rack and you'll be able to see how you should do it as you pull and lift up on the center. What happens is the rack wants to get stuck right here where this is the rear engine mount. Now luckily you don't have to take the rear engine mount out. You only have to take out this bolt right here. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me get my phone oriented for you. Okay. That bolt right there is an 18mm bolt. That's the lower engine mount bracket. Now the rack actually hits this bolt coming from this side on, and you need to twist the rack in the right direction to get it through the engine mount, which actually has a hoop in it, so you can pull out the rack, but you need to take that bolt out, which is really easy. It's just recessed below this tab, so a flat box wrench isn't going to do it. You're either need to use a socket or a bent wrench to clear that. So very simple. Once you get the rack about halfway out, it's going to hit right here, and then you can spin it up a little more and you'll be able to see through your hole with the light the orientation. And then you do need to start getting it to come at an angle out towards you so that you don't hit the sway bar link or the strut on the actual rack shaft. So very easy to get this rack out. Like I said, you got an 18 here, 18 here. There's no other connections or hoses or anything like that. One of the most basic racks in the world to change. And really, all you're going to need is some 18s, some 11 extension, and I highly recommend you get an electric impact. That's a nice tool to have. If you don't have one, then 1/2 inch ratchet's going to work also. You'll just be turning a lot, and like I said, you might need a helper. But very easy to reinstall. This is the same as uninstall. When you put the steering shaft back on, you don't need to mark them or anything. They actually can go on 180 degrees backwards. So that's one you got to be careful. If it's round on each side and then it's flat on each side. So you have to make sure that you make note of that, take a picture of it, so that your shaft isn't 180 out. But you'll know that just by looking at the steering rack, the way the arms and the boots are sitting. Should be, when you take it out, leave everything centered, and you'll see that these boots right here are not extended one way or the other, either facing left or right, so that you can match that up with a new rack over here. These racks can be found for about $140 at Advanced. I think they list for like $180, but they're always running some kind of coupon there, and they have them in stock. So not too bad of a job, and hopefully this helps somebody out. Good luck with your steering fixes.